This is Sarah Heredia, and you are listening to the Freely You podcast. Our time together is meant to inspire you to think bigger and empower you to live your life in a way that makes you proud to be you. I believe that the only box you should fit in is the one that you build for yourself, and I'm here to help you lay the foundation. My journey has taught me that we all deserve to create our own definition of success while meeting ourselves with love and a playful curiosity. My goal is to provide practical tools and fresh perspectives so you can rewrite your story, start living your life on purpose, and ultimately become more freely you. All right, hello and welcome back to the Freely You podcast. So today I have with me a very special guest, Jarrett Quint. This happens to be a man that I have known for, I was doing the math, approximately 22 years. And he is actually a huge part of why I live in the mountains and how I found myself here. So thank you, Jarrett, in advance for that. The other things you should know about Jarrett, he is a professional party starter, which means he is everyone's favorite local DJ. He specializes in weddings and putting out the best après parties. He is someone who has never followed the traditional career path, and he's not been afraid to march to the beat of his own drum, which is something I've always admired about him. I've watched him pursue his dreams for years. He's always had his passions and he's always worked towards them. He's a travel enthusiast, and most importantly, he's one of the few of my dedicated male listeners to the Freely You podcast. So I love that for us. So hello, Jarrett. Welcome.
Hello, Sarah. Thank you for having me today. That's quite the introduction. Can I steal that? Just when I introduce myself to someone, I'll just be like, this is who I am. I'm everything Sarah says.
Yeah, you can do it at the operas.
Yeah, at the operas.
That's how you'll start.
Ladies and gentlemen.
And I'm DJ. So DJ J1 is Jarrett's DJ name. I will link his handle so that you could follow him. He actually put together, or I stole a playlist for him for my retreat, which was a huge success. So thank you for that. And I do just have to ask, Jarrett, so I've been thrilled that you've been one of my listeners. Thank you. But what keeps you coming back? Because I haven't known you to be, I know that you're aware and I know that you are, you're always striving to be better, but I didn't know that you were super into personal development. So tell me why you listen to this podcast.
Yeah. So I started listening as a supportive friend. I was curious to what you're doing. Your social media was super interesting, and I knew you had something in the works. And I felt like our journeys were kind of in similar spots. We had both left careers recently and went out on our own following our entrepreneurship spirits. And I was just curious to what you were doing. And so I actually have been binging the Freely You podcast this weekend, going back to the early episodes, saying, why was I so interested in what Sarah was saying? And your first and second podcast had me hooked. So the first one, your story, all this stuff, after knowing you 22 years, all the stuff that I didn't even know about you was kind of wow, she's deeper than I knew. She's more creative than I ever gave her credit for. And the second podcast with the career stuff spoke to me because career is so important to me. I have a friend, her dad told her the three most important things you can do in your life is choose where you live, who you spend your life with, and what your career is. And that resonates with me. I think it's super important that you get those three things right. If you get those things right, life's going to have its ups and downs, but it makes it a lot smoother on that ride. So, yeah, I think I was hooked from day one. I was listening about your people-pleasing podcast on the way over here, and that resonated with me. I'm such a people pleaser myself, so I keep coming back. It's been a fun journey.
Oh, thanks, Jarrett. Yeah, so Jarrett is actually at my house. He's in my attic, in my office. So I was giving him the tour. So Jarrett, tell the people honestly about the office. What is your first impression?
It is a DIY project with a lot of love and personality, and it's rough around the edges, but aren't we all? And that's it really is you. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful work of art.
Thanks, Jarrett. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that's actually very interesting that your friend has those three, because I've always said that, and that's something I tell my girls, is that like the most important decision you'll make in your life is who you marry. And I do believe that, because that will make or break your day to day. But the other two are absolutely, like, I know that you and I both have such a passion for where we live, and just like what this environment provides us. But the career obviously is so important. So tell the people, so you actually, you went to school, you have your degree. What is your actual degree in?
I have a BFA in fine art, so a Bachelor of Fine Arts in, so it's a split major, and I concentrated in painting and graphic design. The painting was my love, and I was so lucky to have the support of my parents, who education was always big for them, and they told each of us kids that they would split college with us. As long as we got our degree in 4 years, they would split college with us. So I got half of my degree for them. I wanted to have a graphic design degree so I could get a job out of college. And the painting degree was for me, because that was my passion. At the time, still is a passion, not something I pursue currently, but one day hopefully I'll be in a studio painting. That's kind of my retirement plan.
I love that. Yeah. And so Jarrett is an incredible artist. I actually have some of your artwork in my home. And you have always had that, like, I know, and there was a time that you were pursuing it actively. You had your own art studio. I think pretty much when I met you, you had your own art studio. But you've never let it go, for sure. And you've always you've had like stints where you'll come back to it, and then maybe stints where you're not as active in it. But I know that it's never anything that you've let go. That has been your passion, like, since day one.
Yeah, and that's my goal in life, is to make that happen. And my journey has been crazy, how I'm getting to that end goal. But that is the end goal, is to make art for myself, not as a business, not as a career, but just make art for art's sake. And so every part of my journey is trying to set myself up for success so I can eventually do that. And right now it happens to be I'm a wedding DJ, and that's how I make my money. And it's creative, and it's passionate, and it's fun, and it's everything I want out of life right now. So here I am.
Yeah, and so with your graphic design degree, you never actually used that, right? Did you?
So I had a graphic design internship in college, and I was in an office behind a computer at a desk, had very little interaction with any other humans during, that year of an internship. And I unluckily, I'm sure there's listeners out here who knows what it's like to graduate during a recession, but I came out of school in the right following 9/11, following the .com recession, and my degree wasn't worth much in 2002. Those were the jobs that were being shipped overseas. The internet was starting, and the gig economy was starting, and finding a graphic design job wasn't going to be easy. And I decided I'd get into food and beverage and learn a new craft. I wanted to be a bartender.
Yeah, I love that. And the irony of that, because now, like, you could get a graphic design job like today if you wanted. Like,
true.
So available. But that is one thing that I've always admired about you, is that you've never followed like the traditional path, and you kind of always followed your heart in that way. So you did spend a lot of time in the food and beverage industry. And so that was it a passion of yours? Was it just kind of like, did it just happen for you? Like, how did that work out?
Yeah, I think it was definitely not originally a passion, but I saw it as a means to an end, a way to make money quickly. I remember dining at a Sizzler with my family when I was 12, and my dad explaining like why we tipped the waitress, and he's like, I tip because, she's giving us the service, and I'll tip 15% if she does her job, and 20% if she keeps my water full and is attentive. And I was like, I could do that. That's pretty easy. Like, she's good, but I could do that job. And then I remember being in college and watching these bartenders at the college bars just taking dollar bills from every guest as a tip and just loading up these buckets of tip jars. And I'd be like, dang, that's a fast way to make a buck. And yeah, that's kind of those things I had in mind. I moved back home after college, trying to save money for my dreams. And I got a job at an Applebee's for lunch and a Texas Roadhouse for dinner, and those environments couldn't have been further apart. Like the cultures were completely different. The people that worked there were completely different. The clientele were completely different. And like Applebee's felt sad. And the Texas Roadhouse was so fun and energetic, and it just had the greatest people. And yeah, so I started to fall in love with the career in that industry from those days.
Yeah, so if you're connecting the dots, that is where I met Jarrett, was at the Texas Roadhouse, which is so funny because like so many of the important people in my life are from the Texas Roadhouse. And what a great like time of our lives. It really was just the best. It was so fun. Like all of our friends worked there. Like there was never a lack of, just like good times at work and after work. So I love that. And since then we've had some food and beverage fun together too.
Yeah, our story runs long and deep. The Cheese House.
Yeah. Yeah, we were slinging cheese fondue up in Vail at the Swiss Chalet, if you're familiar. If not, highly recommend. But so you stayed in the service industry for a long time. You also carried more than one job, like kind of for the most part, a majority of the time I've known you, I'd say you've always had more than one job. So tell me about that. So you said it wasn't your passion, but you ended up staying in it for a long time. So why?
Yeah, so I did have multiple jobs, and I had multiple jobs because I had big dreams, and the only way I knew how to achieve those dreams, and I had that wanderlust, that travel bug that you mentioned earlier, that you know me as a traveler, and the only way I knew how to work towards those dreams and travel was through hard work, and that meant sometimes a second job, a third job, working 70, 80 hours a week to put money aside and save to go on a grandiose trip, to see an adventure, to backpack Europe, Southeast Asia, take a road trip around the States. So that's why I've been such a hard worker, because I have big dreams, and I want to retire a millionaire and be able to paint freely with no strings attached in my later years. And so, the dream's still alive, and that's why I work hard. And the only way I know how to is just grind it out, and also, save, invest, all those things.
Yeah, and so that is another thing. And honestly, that is a lot of our conversations these days, is me being like, what stock should I buy? So Jarrett's my financial advisor. I don't know if you ever want to do that as a career, but you definitely, you have a ton of knowledge. And so I think that's really interesting, because I don't think that people do look as like, a lot of people don't look at the service industry as like this lifelong career, unless you become like a general manager or something like that, or start your own endeavor. But you really stuck with bartending, and you ended up just getting like literally like the prime bartending job in Vail, which, if you're not familiar with Vail, it is a tourist town. There is a lot of money that comes here in our peak seasons. And so at the end of your food and beverage industry career, you were working at like the hottest restaurant in town and making incredible money doing it. So, but you've always saved, and you've always been really good with your money. And for being a career that doesn't offer kind of those standard things like 401k and health insurance, like that has never hindered you for preparing for your future. And so tell me about that. Tell me about like that. I hear you. The mentality is that you want to retire and you want to be able to pursue your passion even when you're done working day in, day out. But what has been the motivator behind being like so good with your money? Were you taught that? Did somebody show you that? Or have you always just had this like end goal?
Yeah. So I'll go back to the Texas Roadhouse real quick, and this will give you a hint to why I was able to stay so long in the service industry. Bartending at the Texas Roadhouse, I had a guest come in one night. She was from Orlando, Florida, and she was a server at a fancy restaurant, and she told me she made $500 a night. And I was like, dang, that's a lot of money. Like, I make maybe $100 to $200 a night.
Yeah, especially at the Texas Roadhouse. Like, you're making good money. You make good money in the service industry, but that's like a whole nother level.
And I was like, okay, like, challenge accepted.
Yeah, there's
this
potential.
Is my white rabbit. I'm going to chase this $500 a night gig. Like, I know it's out there. So what do I need? Fine dining, fine wine. Great. Game on. Let's do it. So I went all over Denver, gave my application, my resume out. Nobody gave me interviews. Nobody hired me because I had no experience. And so I had a friend in college who was a former professional snowboarder. And he was telling me about his days in Breckenridge. And I was like, you know what? One day I want to be a ski bum. Just one day. Whenever that happens, that's on the bucket list. And things worked out to where I had a winter available. I had worked a summer in Alaska, working on a train, a dining cart on a train. That's another story, but I had to find a winter job because I figured I'd come back to this train job in Alaska the next summer. And I was like, great, I can be a ski bum for a winter. Finally, one of my dreams, one of my bucket list things are going to come true. And I chose Vail because, well, it was closer to Denver, friends and family, than Aspen was, Telluride. And whenever I'd go to Vail, like, the service was subpar and everybody seemed really pretentious. And that's not the case, but all the time. There are definitely, those who care, and you can get great service in Vail, and there's beautiful people running businesses and serving in Vail. But I knew I could take somebody's job in Vail, in fine dining, learn about fine wine, and maybe that was my way to get that $500 a night white rabbit that I was chasing. So that's how I ended up in Vail, and it was working, and that's how I stayed in Vail. I saw the path.
Yeah, you checked the ski bum off the list.
Yeah.
How many years have you been ski bumming it?
I think I was a ski bum for maybe 2 months. I was a professional service industry person, number one. And number two, I would snowboard with my free time, which was so much better than working 3 jobs down in Denver. I could make enough money in Vail, work half the amount of time, play in the outdoors, and get exercise and sun and snow, and it was good. So,
yeah, I mean, living the dream, literally living your dream.
Living my dream, yes.
Yeah. And so when you first moved to Vail, you worked also at Starbucks as a barista. And so you would get up super early. Like, I think you had to be there at 5, is that right? Or 6?
Yeah, 5.
Okay.
5 a.m.
And then after, you would go to work at the Swiss Chalet in the afternoon. So hard worker, obviously. But you actually just showed me this piece of paper, which was a Starbucks schedule. So you've had that for how many years?
About 15 years, 2007.
And on the back of this piece of paper was Jarrett's master plan to become and retire a millionaire. And so tell me about that.
Yeah, all right. So I will go back to Starbucks briefly. One of my jobs in Denver was at a Starbucks, and I found out that all the Starbucks in the mountains gave you a free ski pass if you worked there. The reason I worked at Starbucks is for the health insurance. The reason I stayed at Starbucks is because it was a great work environment, and they did this thing where you could put 10% of your paycheck into the company's shares. So that's how I started investing money. So I would put 10% of my paycheck into owning Starbucks shares, and I'd spend all my breaks down in Denver reading the business section of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and I got like super kind of interested in the stock market in those early days. I worked at Starbucks for the health insurance, and it kind of created this interesting new passion, which was investing. And I was like, how am I going to get rich, right? What do rich people have? They have art. Well, I can't afford it. They have real estate. I can't afford real estate. They have stocks. I was like, oh, like a share of Starbucks stock back then was $30. I can afford that. And so that's kind of how I got started investing. Now, fast forward to living in Vail, and I saw my parents kind of getting older, going like the talks about retirement were coming up, and I was like, how am I going to retire? Like, how do you retire? I don't know. So start researching, Roth IRAs, 401ks, and I come across something that says, if you put 10% of your money aside for retirement, you can live the life that you live now. If you put 15% away, you can live an even better life than you do now. And if you put 5% away, you can retire. And I was like, well, I want to retire and I'd like to keep my lifestyle. So I just started putting 10% of my money away into a Roth IRA. I saved at Starbucks through the 401k plan that they had. And that's that Starbucks schedule that I gave you, that I showed you, was my plan. If I put $4,000 away, which at that time I was probably making $40,000 a year, working Starbucks and the Swiss Chalet, I was like, all right, like I can retire a millionaire. And I did the math. I saw how that compounded. The stock market on average gives you back about 7% annual returns if you go back to the 1950s when the S&P 500, that indice was originated. So I was like, all right, like if I put this money away and it returns 5%, this is how much I'll have in 40 years. If it returns 10%, this is how much I'll have in 40 years. And at 10% a year, I knew I'd have $1 million at $4,000 being saved every year. So that's how I kind of got interested in the stock market, investing, and that's, I continue to do that. So.
And you're on track, right? You haven't stopped.
I'm a year ahead. I'm going to retire a year early if things continue the way
it's going.
But who knows?
Yeah, I mean, let's not count this.
You never know what's going on.
Yeah, but you got a plan, and I think that's a huge piece of it. And so, when are you anticipated to be a retired millionaire?
I would say 2038.
All right.
Yeah.
Dang, I love it. And I love it so much. And this is like I think, why I've always just like, you inspire me in so many ways, because you just look at the world through a different lens, and you've never been one to like follow the rule book. And like, so many of us get stuck in these careers because we are so attached to the 401k, to the retirement, to that like traditional, like, well, if I do this, I get this. And you totally found your own way to get to the end goal, but do it in a way that makes you happy and that you're not miserable going to your job every day, and you can still enjoy your life and the things that you're passionate about. So it's very admirable. And I just want all the people to hear that it's possible. And I think that one thing that you mentioned, but I want to touch on, is that, there's always been that self-education, and you've always been, learning about investing. And even in the food and beverage industry, like you went and you got your sommelier certification. So you've always been like educating yourself so that you can continue to move forward and reach your goals. But that's that is such an option that I think that people don't realize. Our society is very like, you graduate high school, you go to college, and that's just what you do. And it's like there's so many resources, especially these days with the internet and a million different ways to get certified and educated. So I love the non-traditional side of you. I've always have.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. It was the only way for me. And I know it's not the way for everyone or most, but I've always had a clear vision on where I'm heading and what my goals are. And I've achieved a lot of my goals in the past. So I know I can achieve my goals in the future if I, put together a game plan and stick to it and dedicate my life and my extra time and my energy towards those things. Mm-hmm. So.
And I know travel has been such a huge thing for you, and that was being in Vail. That is one of the beautiful things about being in a tourist town, is that there are very defined off seasons. So in the fall and in the spring, it's really quiet. So when you're in the food and beverage industry, it's a great opportunity to get out of town. So what are your travel goals in general? Like, do you have like set goals? Do you budget for it each year? Like, how do you go about making sure that you travel?
Right. Yeah, I love that. So I'm going to go back to my school days, our college days, my high school days. And we grow up in a society where you go to school, in the spring, you have a big chunk of time off, 2-3 weeks. You go back in the spring, fall, and then you have your summer vacation, and you've got 2-3 months off. And all of a sudden you go into the work career, the American capitalist society, the salary, the 401k, and the 2 weeks paid time off. And I was like, hell no, yeah. That's not going to work for me. Yeah. I just spent, 22 years of my life having summers off and winters off. I'm not taking 2 weeks off. And after college, I went on this 3-month backpack tour of Europe, and I was hooked with travel. And like I mentioned earlier, travel was what I was always saving for. The art kind of went to the side, and my passion was travel. And I knew I wanted to retire, and I saw my older relatives retiring and not having the money to travel, or not being in the best health to travel. And so I said in my 20s, I'm going to spend my 20s traveling. Like, screw career, all my money is going to go to travel, and that's going to be my life, because you're not guaranteed a future. You're not guaranteed tomorrow, your health, your money, all you have is now. And I'm going to do what I want to do in my life now in my 20s and travel, and I'll figure out the rest later. So during the great financial crisis, I was listening to NPR, and they were talking about how Americans save. And they were saying that the average American saves about 3% of their income annually. And they were comparing that to China. And China saved, on average, about 30% of their income.
Dang.
On average. And I was like, dang, that is like a huge gap. And from that day on, I said, how can I save 30% of my income? And so I started to put these 3 pots together, these imaginary pots, bank accounts, whatever. This savings account was one pot, the savings account was another. And I said, I'm going to put 30% of my income away. I'm going to put 10% into what I now call my YOLO account, which is how I travel. Like, if I want to do something, if there's money in the YOLO account, I do it. The YOLO is you only live once, and you're not promised tomorrow. And if there's a Taylor Swift concert you want to go to, and you want to bring your girls,
$1,000 in your bank account,
you go. But that's what that pot of money was for. And the other 10% was my adulting savings account, and that money was for engagement ring, wedding, new car, starting a company, education, down payment for a house. And so that money was all for just like future things that I knew I would need, and, kind of growing up. Emergency funds. I mean, an emergency fund is huge. Thank God we have that emergency fund for the pandemic, for when we don't have water at our house for 6 months, whatever it may be. And then the other 10% was my retirement, which I had talked about at Starbucks. So I've kept to that structure since 2009. Recently, I was listening to a podcast, one of my favorite podcasts. It's The Compound and Friends with Josh Brown. He's a CNBC affiliate. And he had a guest on, and he was talking about this book he had just read about the 10X your life. And 10X your life is like, all right, the difference between, gaining something. Okay, I want to be healthier. I'm going to start jogging. I'm going to go on a 2-mile run every day or every couple days. So that's how you 2X your life, 3X your life. Or you go, I'm going to be a marathoner, and I'm going to sign up for a marathon, and that's how you 10X your life, because it's a bigger commitment. And, it might be, I'm going to go vegetarian a couple days a week, or I'm going full vegan. Like, it's a huge difference. And I was like, how did I 10X my life? Have I done that? And looking back, going from 3% savings rate to a 30% savings rate was a 10X.
Totally.
And so, if you can look at your life and figure out, how can I greatly improve the things that I want to improve in my life? Is it baby steps, or is it just a giant leap?
Yeah.
So that's...
And it's having this, gigantic, I always say dream bigger. It's like, you can, I posted the other day, somebody had sent me, I was in their top 5 podcasts for the year, which is incredible. And right
awesome.
above me, above
awesome.
me was Mel Robbins and Call Her Daddy. And 2 very different genres, by the way. But I love Call Her Daddy because she's just like herself, and she has all these cool people on, and that's amazing. And goals. And also Mel Robbins, total goals. And I wrote it jokingly of I'm coming for you. I'm coming for those 2. And I was like, that's a huge goal. And then it's why not? Why not say that's the goal? Because
why not me?
Yeah, exactly. Why not you? Why not set the bar a little bit higher for yourself? And you're saying, you can break it down into smaller steps, but have the big vision, man. Go all in on it. Decide that you're going to retire in a totally non-traditional way early and enjoy your damn life.
Yeah. Absolutely. Preach.
So with the travel, I will say thank you to you, because really you did definitely drop the travel bug in me. I did not. I always kind of wanted to travel, but I didn't know where to begin, and it was it's scary as I think a woman. I don't know if I was a woman at that time, but to go out on your own. And so my first big international trip was with you, and we went to Asia and we went to Australia, and you really showed me the ropes, and it was incredible. And since then, it has been it's all I care about. It's I will spend all my money on travel because it just brings me so much joy. You didn't mention that one other hack that you had for keeping your travel alive is that you married a woman from Argentina. So
that allows me to travel internationally annually. So
so you just got back from Argentina.
We got back 2 weeks ago. Lovely trip, lovely country.
Lovely people.
The people are incredible. We were there a year ago when Argentina won the World Cup.
Oh.
And
big time.
It was, I've never seen anything like that. It was, I say my wedding day was the best day of my life. And I'm a huge Denver Broncos fan, and those Super Bowls were incredible, but to see Argentina win a World Cup in Argentina was, you can't imagine how incredible that is. Everybody is just rallying around the same thing. Rich, poor, black, white, different sides of the political divide, and everyone just cheering each other, singing songs, embracing this joyful spirit of togetherness. It was awesome.
Totally. I live vicariously through Instagram stories, but incredible. Incredible. So one thing, just to stick on the money topic for a minute, you also are somebody, do you consider yourself a minimalist?
I try to live simply if I can. Yeah, a minimalist. Less is more. Like I don't want a lot of things. I've got a few hobbies, and those hobbies I really spend a lot of time with. But yeah, you saw me roll up in my 2005 Toyota Corolla that I've owned for 18, 19 years. Like, I don't need a new car. This one works just fine. I don't, like, my wife will tell me to, like, get new clothes, like, yeah, get new socks, get new underwear. I'm like, these are still fine. Come on, babe. Like, just a few holes. Like, she's so funny. She's like, imagine if you get in an accident and you're in like an emergency room and a doctor's operated on you and you've got like holes in your underwear. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I should throw these away.
So I remember specifically, like, this is years ago that you said this, like, if I buy a new pair of pants, like, it's pretty much because I need a new pair of pants and I'm probably going to get rid of my favorite pair of pants because it's time for a new one. Do you still live by that for the most part?
Yeah, my wife likes to buy me new stuff. I'm like, no, why? And then I'm like, I really like this stuff. Thank you. Yeah, she knows what I need.
That's nice. I was going to ask, is she minimal or is she...
No, she's pretty traditional. I mean, I say... spend your money on what you enjoy. If you want to save money and do the things that I've kind of been preaching, I'm not saying don't spend your money. Like, spend your money on the things you love, whether it's fashion, handbags, shoes, food, travel, but save your money on the other parts of life that don't bring you joy. When I before I quit my lucrative job at the best bar in town that you mentioned, we were going on really nice vacations and staying at really nice places. And I was like, you know what? There's not a big difference between a fancy vacation and a vacation. Like I travel to travel. Totally. I don't care the thread count on my sheets and, like.
Yeah. Well, how much time do you spend in your hotel room? Really?
Right. So, but that's me.
Yeah, I mean,
if you care about your thread count, then by all means, spend the money for a nice hotel and a nice room.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, I feel like we try to splurge, like maybe a couple nights we'll go all out, but for the most part. But also, like, where you travel, like we went to Spain a couple years ago, and it was like I felt like a freaking queen there. Like, we could just like eat, drink all day long, and it would be incredibly cheap. So yeah, there's affordable options out there. For travel. So you're obviously, I hope that everybody's hearing, you're good with your money, but you also have just a different outlook on money. So what is something that you would tell somebody? And I do want to talk just a little bit about investing, like, because it can be overwhelming. I know for me it was overwhelming. I have Apple stock, which you actually purchased for me like back in the day, and God bless you for that. But it was because I didn't know how to set up an E-Trade account. Like, I was so overwhelmed by it. But I was like, well, I know that this is like the smart thing to do. And you're like, I'll do it for you. And thank you. That stock is gold. But what would you tell somebody that it does feel overwhelming? And it's like, it almost is like a foreign language if you're not familiar with it.
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm not a financial advisor. I have no licenses. So like, this is all entertainment purposes, this conversation. None of this is investment advice or financial advice. This is what, like, the podcast I listen to say before every episode. And
I mean, they're listening to me.
Yeah. So, like, number one, like, if you don't know what you're doing and it feels overwhelming, like, I hate car maintenance, I'm going to go to the mechanic. I'm going to take my car to the mechanic and let them do it. Hand it off to the pros. So find a financial advisor that you trust. Whatever it is, like, talk to your parents, talk to your relatives, talk to your friends that are good with money. Say, how did you do this? Who do you know? So I will say that, like, my brother-in-law is a financial advisor. And I went to him for advice early on when I first wanted to start, like, investing in the stock market. And, after my days at Starbucks reading the New York Times business section, and, like, I would, like, look at these stocks and write down names and prices and compare them over like months. And I had like Apple, Amazon, Netflix, all these things that I knew in my life that I was like, these are things that I want to invest in. And I'd talk to him and I'd be like, hey, like, I want to start investing in the stock market. What do you think I should do? He's like, yeah, great, Jarrett. Like, that's great that you're doing this. I would recommend some safer companies. Here, maybe some oil stocks, General Electric, some insurance companies. And I was like, oil, hell no. Like, I'm like kind of an environmentalist. Like, that goes against everything I believe in. This other stuff you're talking about is boring. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
So I like didn't take his advice. The first year I was invested in the stock market, I was just, like, oh, I'm going to buy Nintendo stock and GameStop stock and Crocs and Apple and all these things that I just knew in my life. I had my Starbucks stock and my money was up like 40% in the first year. I was like, oh, this is easy. Well, this was like 2006, 2007. 2008 came around and I lost my ass. And like all those stocks like went to zero. So up 50% one year, down 50% the next year. So you're thinking, okay, you're back at zero, right? No. Like if you have $100, it goes up 50%, you're at $150. It goes down 50%, you're at $75. So like it was, a staircase, an escalator on the way up and an elevator on the way down. And so I went back to my brother-in-law and I was like, all right, I'll take some of your advice. But I still kept investing in the things that I knew and believed before I knew anything. But luckily I got the Apple stock right and a few others. So
I remember you telling me that do something that you're interested in, or look for a company that you actually believe in, their product or their service or where they're going or their morals. Like, find a product or a company that you can get behind and that you're interested in, that it's not like reading about oil. Like,
yeah. And funny enough, like I took his advice, invested in oil companies, and like I was like, all right, BP. 6 months later, the BP oil spill happens, and I was like, I knew I should have listened to him.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, I'm never gonna tell anybody where to put their money or how, give them advice, because if it doesn't go right, I feel responsible. That's why I don't think I could ever be a financial advisor. I thought about that as a career path at one point, but yeah, I have told people to buy stocks that I was in, and they've gone south, bankrupt, down to zero, and I felt horrible. Luckily, the Apple stock worked out for you and me, but yeah, it's the way I think of it is only invest in what you can lose. I'm not a trader. I don't do options. I just say, the safer the stock is, the better the company, the more likely that company is going to be around in 5-10 years, the higher percentage of money I'll put into that. The dart throws, a very small minority percentage of my money will go into those, because if they don't work out, it's not a big loss. I ride all my stocks. I try to stay in them for at least 2 to 5 years, but I'm hoping to stay in them for 20 to 30 years. And if they go to zero, then that's the worst that can happen, but they can multiply. Sky's the limit. In 1980, 10 days apart, Apple and Nike both went public. So $1,000 investment in Apple in 1980, you would have bought the shares at 10 cents a share.
Oh my God.
You would have almost $2 million today.
Dang.
And if you also bought Nike, $1,000 in Nike at 22 cents a share, today would be worth $500,000. So that's compounding, that's time, that's being patient. I'm not going to pick all the winners, but I'd be lucky if I get one or two.
Totally. Yeah. And it's that long game. Yeah. So tell me so you were in this very lucrative bartending gig for quite some time, and you had always been doing DJing on the side. Like you kind of, well, tell me how it started. How did you start? I know how it started. You were DJing employee parties like at apartment buildings and like after hours, like 2 a.m. style. Jarrett would bust out his little, what is it? Spin? What?
The spinny thingy?
The spin
Yeah, my
table?
Behringer, my two Behringer like 12-inch speakers and my Vestex old school mixer, and I would have two iPods. Instead of like turntables, I just play off of two iPods. It was so silly.
Hey, you got the party started.
But I started DJing in college. I did like a college radio station specialty show, and it was kind of like this hobby that I picked up in college. And I had this weekly show, and I'd spend all week listening to music, preparing these shows, and I would play all my favorite underground hip hop, and I'd also play like all the songs that I knew because of hip hop samples. So a lot of it would be like these like 50s and 60s jazz records, and like this 60s and 70s like soul and funk, like James Brown, Parliament Funkadelic, and the idea was like, like this is the music that inspired hip hop. This is where all these samples came from. And then we'd also play like just cool college underground indie hip hop as well. Mm-hmm. And I quit doing that after college, like got into service industry, bartending, serving tables. But I always missed it. And it was always, just kind of like I wanted to throw a party, and I spent an entire year planning a party that I was going to DJ, and it was a late 80s, early 90s theme party at a friend's house, and everybody at the hotel that I worked at came dressed up in costume, and I had like 200 songs from this era of my childhood that I just loved, and I just played that, and I was hooked, and I was like, man, I just want to play music from here on out. And I think that's how I got back into DJing, was just planning this party, playing this party. It was like legendary. There's a picture of me from this party that is my Instagram like photo on my personal like Instagram site, because that laid the groundwork for DJ J1 and the professional party starter.
Yeah. So when did you realize? So again, following your passion, kudos to you for always doing that. When did you decide like this could actually be, I could make money doing this? And like tell me how you got there, and tell me how you got like the balls to actually do it.
Okay. So I realized I could make money as a DJ when I would work events at the hotel that we worked at the Bavarian Hotel in Vail that we worked at, because they would throw these grandiose weddings, and I would work as a banquet server at these weddings, and I would see local DJs come in and play these weddings, and they were good, like, but it wasn't any different from what I was doing at night in my employee sponsored apartment at the employee parties that I would throw. And I was like, I could do that. Like, and then a couple years later, a friend of mine asked me to DJ her wedding, and she said, oh, I went to this DJ, and this was one of the DJs I saw come through the hotel, and she's like, oh, he charges this much. I was like, what? That's how much they charge? I was like, dang, maybe I could make money doing this. And so I just started doing it as a hobby, do it for friends as like a wedding gift, and, like give them a great rate. But it was really just to get the experience. And, luckily the first wedding I did was super fun and successful. And one gig always leads to the next. And, within a couple of years, I had 20 weddings, mostly from friends, but some random ones too. And I was just having fun, as a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no intention to ever be a DJ It was always going to be on the side. But my last couple years at my great bartending job, I was just getting burnt out, too much people pleasing. But yeah, I hit like rock bottom. I was miserable for like a year. They were like the darkest days. I would leave work and just cry on my way home the entire ride home, like bawling tears of just like when is this going to be over? How long can I go? Like the joy in that career had taken its toll. And it was over, and my body was also like it had taken its toll.
Yeah.
Knees, back, shoulder, toes.
Yeah, it's a hard and it's physical labor. And you're at a restaurant that was super busy. Like it's go time from the moment you get there until super late at night, like late shifts too. So long hours, physical labor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was, I had to leave that job. I told my boss my last summer, going into that summer, that, hey, everything I just shared now, I told him, and I said, I don't think I'm going to make it much longer. I'm going to stick it out for the summer. He said, if you can't make it, like, I understand, like, thanks for being honest. And I made it about 2 weeks into the summer, and the owners of the restaurant came in one night, gave our staff our shift meeting, and was like, hey, everybody, we're really happy with everything you've been doing. We think of you guys as a family, and I know you've done a lot during the pandemic, and thank you for that. And then I go to the office and talk to the general manager, and he's like, hey, Jarrett, the owner, he mentioned that your shirt's not ironed. And
that was it.
I was like, yeah, it's a non-ironed shirt. I haven't ironed my shirt since the day I started. Nobody irons their shirt. And he looks at my shirt. He's like, yeah, it doesn't look that bad. I don't know what he's saying. And I was like, and I just like did everything I could to make it through that shift. And at the end of the night, I told my boss, I was like, this is my last night.
Yeah.
Got in my car, tears just like running down my face. And I like turn on the car, and like my phone just put on like the most random song, and it was Al Green, Love and Happiness. And it just felt so good. And I was like such a release. I'm like, I'm out, I'm done. I can like get out of this job that was so miserable and brought me just so much pain. And I'm free. And what's next? And I'm like, love and happiness. Like, where's my love? Where's my happiness? And it's music. It's making people dance, making people feel good, creating a vibe. And I've been, a year and a half making my money by just, providing a sound and a vibe. And it's been awesome.
Yeah. And a long time coming, because you did DJ my wedding, and that was 9 years ago. So I just want to point that out, that this is not like an overnight progression where you just became a professional DJ overnight. Like you poured your heart and soul into this on the side just because you loved it, not knowing, like not even having that vision for it or knowing what you were going to get out of it, but it led you to where you needed to go. And so I think that's really beautiful. So tell me about when you were leaving, was it pure relief, or was there fear as well?
Oh, definitely fear. So much fear. So much fear. But the relief was like all this weight on my shoulders had been lifted. I was scared to death on what my future looked like. But thank God I, had been saving like I did. I had money in the bank for an emergency situation, like losing your job. So I didn't lose my job. I quit my job happily. And I was going to use that money to start the DJ business. And a couple days later, I had somebody I knew contact me and say, hey, we've got the silent disco going on, and we'd like you to be one of our DJs. I was like, sweet, I got some money coming in. And like phone calls and emails started coming in for more like weddings and events, and it just snowballed. And yeah,
Yeah.
it all worked out.
Totally. Yes. It all worked out because you followed that intuition. You knew you weren't happy anymore, and you went towards the direction that felt good and felt right and was bringing you joy and happiness. Like huge, huge. So, do you have anything else to add to that? Okay. So, there is one more thing that I want to talk to you about. And actually, as I was telling my husband, I was telling him you were coming over, and he was like, "Oh, that's awesome. Like, what are you guys going to talk about?" And I was like, well, and I do want to talk to him about his dad, because you lost your dad quite a few years ago now. And Johnny was like, God, you always have to bring in like something like depressing. I'm like, well, this is like serious talk here, okay? This is like real life shit. And so how long ago did you lose your dad, Jarrett?
15 years ago.
15 years to cancer.
To cancer, to throat cancer. Okay. He was a Vietnam vet, and he started smoking cigarettes as a teenager. So Agent Orange and tobacco, I'm sure, took a toll.
For sure.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, and so you did have some time to say goodbye to him. You knew that was his diagnosis, and you guys had some time together. So do you feel like, I know you took advantage of that, because I remember you going down to Denver like every opportunity you had. So tell me about that time and like coming to that realization.
Yeah, so I mentioned, with my story, living in Alaska, coming to Vail, needing a place to work for the winter, and Vail happened to be that spot. So that first winter in Vail was the year that he was diagnosed with cancer. So I was so glad that I chose Vail over Aspen or Telluride, so I could spend those next couple years driving back and forth from Denver to Vail to visit him with my days off. And his cancer, he went through the chemotherapy treatment and all that for that first year, and I stayed in Vail, and then after a year, it had spread to his bones, so we knew what that meant, that, time was limited. And I decided I'd move back to Denver and live at home and spend as much time with him as I could. That was important for me to make sure that relationship was repaired if there was anything broken. And he was my role model. He was like my only real male like role model figure growing up. I grew up with a lot of strong aunts, and I had my two mothers, my stepmother, my mom, and my sisters, and he showed me how to be a male and navigate the world as a male. And it was important for me to learn as much from him before he passed. So I moved back home, and it was sad to see him go, and but it was such a blessing to spend just days walking the dog with him and learning his rules for life and how he navigated life. He didn't grow up with any money. He had a choice to either go to Vietnam or go to maybe jail when he was a teenager.
Wow.
He was a troublemaker. He lived on the streets of Denver and didn't have like the greatest home growing up. Lived with an aunt that took care of him, and he was the greatest father you could ever imagine. Everything he didn't have in his life, he provided for his kids. He did the exact opposite of his father, and so it was great. I'm so happy that I did that, and going through that, like, I didn't care about money at that time or how I was gonna survive or what was next. I took a 60% pay cut to go back working at a Starbucks in Denver so I could spend time with him. And so for me to just recently quit my lucrative job and take another 60% pay cut, I've run this game plan before. I'm doing what my heart tells me to do. But all we have in life is time, and spend your time doing what you love and with the people you love. And our elders are great resources, our parents, our grandparents, and you only have so much time with them. The holidays are coming up. How old are your parents? You see them once a year for the holidays?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, well, if they're, the average life expectancy in the U.S. is 75, and your parents are 65, does that mean you have 10 more visits?
Yeah.
Make them count.
Totally. So do you feel like having that time with your dad, do you feel like you were grieving during that time? And I guess as an extension of that question, do you feel like there's still grief there? Or like, do you feel like you've processed it because it has been so long?
Because it's been so long, and because I spent that time with him and we hashed out whatever we had to hash out, the grieving process I feel like is over. Of course, I get sad when, anniversaries come up, his birthday, things like that. But I felt numb for like the first 2 years while he had the sickness, while he had the cancer, while he was dying. And then once he did pass, the grieving was a good 5-10 year process. Like the first couple of years were awful. Like he was a role model, but he was like a best friend. So we were really close.
Yeah. And you've done an incredible job of keeping his spirit alive, even all these years later. So tell us about your golf tournament.
Yeah, so we, my lovely family runs most of this. His wife, my stepmother, and my brother-in-law and sister, the financial advisor. So they really do all the hard work, and we have a tournament down in Denver. Usually we try to do it around his birthday, sometime in August, September, and we currently have around 100 to 140 golfers that come play golf. We have a silent auction, a live auction, and we raise money for cancer patients in the state of Colorado. And when my dad was going through his chemo, he went up and visited a woman that they found out that lived in Longmont and had cancer, and they brought all these gifts because it was around the holidays for this woman. And this woman didn't have health insurance, and my dad was he had a hard time seeing how could people go through this thing that he was going through without having the support that he had, having family and health insurance. And this woman had no health insurance, and he just felt just awful for her. And we know that there's people like that out there that don't have the means that they had or we have. And so the money that we raise, we send it out to cancer patients in the state that might need help with getting, rides to chemo, a taxi, food, medicine, whatever it can be. So that's the James L. Quint Foundation. I'm really proud to, see his legacy live on through that and try to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Our state, our community, helping those in need.
Yeah.
Especially during the holidays.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I do just think it's so important because I know, losing a parent is, it's for me, it's unfathomable. And so for you that's been through it and not sitting on the other side of it, because of course you always have those emotions come up, but you've done just such a good job of keeping his spirit alive. And I just think it's an important topic. And I know other people that are navigating that. So it does get easier. And it's okay if it's hard. I mean, it's going to be hard, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jarrett, tell the people where they can find you.
Oh boy. You can find me on social media, on Instagram. My handle is DJJ1, and that is D.J.Jayone, and that's really kind of where I like to put out my content. I do have a Spotify DJJ1 as well, where I put playlists up there from previous events and some of the hotels that I play. I play in town in Vail. I don't know if you have a lot of Colorado listeners or Vail listeners, but I will be playing this winter season doing operas at the Treff Cafe, which is a part of the Sonanop Hotel in the Vail Village, Fridays, Saturdays from 4 to 7 p.m. And I'm at a hotel called the Hythe Hotel. It's a luxury property in Lions Head Village. I'm there on Thursday nights from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Playing like chill house music and just like setting a vibe. These aren't like, I'm not playing the Macarena and like wedding tunes.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's just chill house music.
Yeah, and if you're in the state of Colorado and you happen to be getting married, Jarrett's your guy.
yeah. Weddings are my jam. I love a wedding.
So fun.
Your wedding was great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for being there. Thank you for being here, Jarrett. I adore you. I love so much how you live your life, how you followed your heart this entire time. I love how you're a man that likes personal development, that is not afraid to admit that you shed tears. It's refreshing. And I know that anybody that meets you feels that. So I'm just really excited to share you with my listeners. So thanks for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I know you know that I was nervous coming on, and there was nothing to be nervous about. Like, this is the best podcast. You're on my top 3 podcasts. I had to quit listening to an investment podcast to make room for you. And then I binged it while we were in Argentina, and I binged it this weekend, and I'll continue to support and listen because I love the content that you put out, and it's refreshing. And yeah, I'm proud of you as well. So. Thanks.
I'm proud of you and us. All right, Jarrett. Yeah, you crushed it. You had no reason to be nervous. Thank you. You guys, thank you so much for being here today. You actually have no idea just how much it means to me. If you enjoyed this episode or believe in my mission, can you do me a solid and leave me a review, follow, or share this podcast? It would be so greatly appreciated. Also, if you don't already, you can follow me on Instagram at FreelySarahHeredia. Sending you so much love, and I'll be talking to you soon.